Hello, we're back again with Freak the Mighty, Chapter 12. Killer Kane had a kid who got no brain. We're going to go ahead and get right into the reading here, and we may have time for an interview afterwards. We'll see about the time limit here. I feel real bad for Freak because he hates it when people try to rub his head for luck. But I don't say a word. I just run us home thumping the short way back around the pond, and my big feet never even trip because I'm on automatic. I'm this running machine. Whoa! Freak says when we get to his house. Now that was an adventure, huh? Evil dude like Iggy Lee, we were lucky to get out of there alive. Freak goes, no way, that was all talk. Yeah, right. The real deal is that I was scared the whole time I was there, and so was Freak, even if he won't admit it now. Well, that stuff about my father was true, Freak says, studying his fingernails and acting real cool again. The Fairgwain won't talk about it. All she says is, he made his decision and I made mine. But I know he ran away because of me. And you know what? What? Good riddance to bad rubbish. For some reason, that really gets me laughing. Something about the way he says it, or maybe it's all that nervous stuff left over from the New Testaments. Whatever, I'm rolling on the ground like a moron, and Freak is strutting around saying stuff like, Loretta, my queen, wouldst thou accept my hand in marriage? And Sir Iggy, wouldst thou do us all a big favor and fall upon thy sword? And I'm laughing so hard I can hardly breathe. Everything is pretty much okay after that. One thing we don't do, though, we don't talk about my father, good old Killer Kane, which is fine by me. School. For the last week or so, it's like getting jabbed with a little needle every time I hear that word. Graham is trying to pretend how excited she is. I'm finally in the 8th grade, like this is really a big deal. Which is a joke, because the only reason I got passed from 7th grade is because they figured this way the big butthead can be, quote, someone else's problems. Thank God, we've had quite enough of Maxwell Kane, unquote. Graham takes me out to the mall to get new clothes, which is about as much fun as going to the dentist. Except maybe worse, because at least at the dentist you're mostly in a chair with the door closed. We're at the mall with Graham, it's like, hello world, here I am, take a good look. This girl in the store, she's got this little smirk and she goes, 13 triple E, do they make shoes that big? And Graham goes, I'm quite sure they do, dear, you just go ask the manager. And then she looks at me and she goes, Maxwell, this is not major surgery, so will you please, as a special favor for me, wipe that wounded look off your face and try to be polite? Yeah, right. The manager, when he comes out with these Brand X running shoes, he wants to help me take off my old shoes like he's pretty sure I can't do it by myself. But I give him this look and he backs off and lets me do it by myself. I wish you'd tie those laces, dear, Graham says, and when I'm squishing around the new shoes. Well, that's the fashion, the manager says with this heh laugh. Actually, they're designed that way. You don't need to lace them up. Just to prove what a jerk he is, I tie up the laces, and that makes Graham happy. Which is funny sometimes, how little it takes to make her happy. Except you can't really figure out until you've already done it. Does that make any sense? Finally, we escape the mall, and I've got enough new clothes to last me, as Grim points out, a week or so. Well, you could just keep letting out his cuffs, Grim says. Except they don't have cuffs now. What am I thinking? Oh, I think he looks quite handsome, Graham says. Maxwell, please turn around and keep your shirt tail tucked in. Oh, leave him alone, Grim says. He's not a fashion model. I just can't get over it, Graham says. Our little Maxwell's growing up. Growing is right, Grim says. The boy's certainly growing. The deal is, Freak and I get to be in the same classes. He made the Fairgwain go in and see all these people at the school because I wasn't supposed to be in the smart classes. No way. And finally they agreed it would be good for Freak having someone to help him get around. Graham acts kind of worried about it, and she doesn't want to sign the papers like she thinks the LD class has done me a lot of good or something. And being in the genius class is just going to make me slower and dumber than ever. But one night I come up the cellar stairs, real quiet, and Grim is saying, let's give it a try. Nothing else has worked. Maybe that's what he needs as a friend. And that's the one thing he's never had with all those special teachers. And the next morning she signs the papers and we get to school the first day and Freak helps me find my name on the list and it's true. We're all in the same classes. At first, all the other kids are looking cool and acting cool and showing off their new outfits. They hardly notice us in the hall. Freak is riding high on my shoulders, or the deal where his desk is always right next to mine. That wears off, though, and by the time we leave math, which is just passing out the textbooks and a bunch of numbers chalked on the blackboard, you can hear the whispers in the hall, like, "Hey, who's the midget?" and "There goes Mad Max," and "Excuse me while I barf," and "Look what escaped from the freak show," and "Oh my God, that's disgusting." Maxwell Kane? This is from Mrs. Dinelli, the English teacher. She's new to the school, and when I nod and raise my pencil, she goes, "Maxwell, would you please stand up and tell the class something about your summer?" Which, if she wasn't new to the school, she'd know better, because getting up in class and saying stuff is not something I do. "Maxwell," she goes, "is there a problem?" Well, by now there's a lot of noise, and the kids are shouting stuff like, "Forget it, Miss Dinelli, his brain's in his tail." "Yeah, ask him to count and he can paw the ground." "Maxie Pad, Maxie Pad. Ask him quick about his dad." Killer Kane, had a kid who got no brain." Miss Dinelli had this look like she stepped in something and can't get it off her shoe. The shouting and singing goes on, and pretty soon some of the kids are throwing stuff at us. Pencils, erasers, wadded up paper. And it's like Miss Dinelli has no idea what to do about it. The room is out of control. Then Frick climbs up on his desk, what makes him about as big as a normal person standing up, and he starts shouting at the top of his lungs. "Order!" he shouts. "Order in the court! Let justice be heard!" And for some reason, maybe because he looks so fierce with his jaw sticking out and his little fists all balled up, and the way he's stamping his crooked little feet, everybody shuts up, and there's this spooky silence. Finally, Miss Dinelli says, "You must be Kevin, is that right?" Freak has this look like he's really fierce. Still acting really fierce, and he goes, "Well, sometimes I am." "Well, sometimes? What does that mean?" "It means sometimes I'm more than Kevin." "Well, oh," says Miss Dinelli, and you can tell she has no idea what he's talking about, but she thinks it's important to hear him talk. "So, Kevin," she says, "can you please all give us an example?" Next thing I know, Freak has his hands on my head. He's getting himself on my shoulders, and he's tugging at me in a way that I know means stand up. So I do it. And I stand up in class, and I see Miss Dinelli's eyes getting bigger and bigger. I'm standing there with Freak high above me, and it feels right. It makes me feel strong and smart. "How's this for an example?" Freak is saying. "Sometimes we're 9 feet tall and strong enough to walk through walls. Sometimes we fight gangs. Sometimes we find treasure. Sometimes we slay dragons and drink from the Holy Grail." Miss Dinelli is backing up to her desk, and she says, "Oh my, that's very interesting, I'm sure, but could you please both just sit down?" Freak is riding me like he's the jockey, and I'm the horse, and he's steering me around the class, showing off. He's raising his fist and punching it in the air, going, "Freak the Mighty! Freak the Mighty!" And pretty soon he's got all the other kids chanting, "Freak the Mighty! Freak the Mighty! Freak the Mighty!" Even though they don't know what he's talking about or what it means. I'm standing up straight as tall as I can, and I'm marching exactly like he wants me to. Right and left, backwards and forwards, and it's like music or something. I don't even have to think about it, I just do it. All these kids are chanting our name, and Miss Dinelli has no idea what's going on. She's flipped out and more or less hiding behind her desk. The whole class is raising their hands in the air and chanting, "Freak the Mighty! Freak the Mighty! Freak the Mighty!" I can't explain why, but it was really pretty cool. Anyhow, that's how Freak and I get sent to the principal's office the first time together. Mrs. Addison, she's the principal. She takes one look at us waiting outside her office, and she goes, "What have we here?" "I'm afraid there's been a slight misunderstanding," Freak says. "If you'd be so good to allow me to explain." Mrs. Addison is this really serious acting black woman with tight gray hair and a bun and these suits that make her look like she works for a bank or something. She has this funny little smile like she's sucking on a lemon, and it quick turns sweet, and she goes, "Well, by all means, let's hear what you have to say. Convince me." I can't really remember what Freak said, except he used so many big words she had to keep looking up stuff in his dictionary, which she seemed to get a real kick out of. But the important thing is, whatever Freak told her, she fell for it. And we do have time for a quick character interview right here. I actually have Miss Dinelli right here next to me, and would like your reaction from the first day of school with Max and Freak. What did you see there?
Oh, thankfully now, after therapy, I have recovered from the traumatic experience. But it was quite interesting seeing him parade around the room with Freak on his shoulders, and I didn't really know what to think there.
So Max and Freak in the same classroom. Do you think this actually is going to work, Miss Dinelli? I don't know. Like a lot of people say that Max is not smart enough to be in these classes. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I have a feeling that Freak, he seems to be a very bright young man, and I don't know, he seems like he might be able to tutor Max. I don't know. I just hope that they don't go do that Freak the Mighty thing around the classroom again. That was the first day of school. I don't know what to say. I am absolutely going to have to put my foot down and step up my classroom management, but I don't know. I'm a little scared of that Maxwell. He's rather big, and something about his father, I don't know, something about a killer Kane, and I shudder to think what that boy went through as a child.
Yes, Miss Dinelli. Obviously, that is a very hard thing to go through. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
I just hope that these two actually work well together in my class. I don't want any more of that parading around the room, though.
Well, I think that you're okay on that, and I think that you'll get used to it after a while. Anyways, thank you for reading Freak the Mighty, Chapter 12. Have a wonderful afternoon, or evening, or morning, wherever you're at.